In this video we'll be turning a simple hot dog container into a beautiful piece of nature. And I know it may seem complicated to build a system like this, but it's really not that hard. There's no need to overthink it, just grab any container with a lid and we can get started. Like I mentioned before, I'm using a hot dog container. Now on it doesn't say hot dog, instead it says knackwurst, which is the Dutch word for hot dog. Worst meaning sausage and knack referring to the sound it makes when you bite into it. Knack. Now let's get this thing cleaned off so we can get started. To get the sticker off of this thing, I'm soaking it in warm soapy water for roughly 10 minutes. After which I can start peeling it off and scrub away any glue residue. Now we're left with a clean container. But before we get started, it's important to take a good look at your container. Oftentimes glass containers like this one have two seams on opposite sides. These slightly obstruct your view into the terrarium, and therefore it's best to locate these before you get started so you can turn them to either side of the container and have a nice unobstructed view into your terrarium. Next, I'm preparing a substrate barrier. I like to use geotextile fabric, but some kind of mesh would work as well. I like to cut these slightly larger than the base of the terrarium so I can curl the edges upwards later. But before we can add the barrier, I'm adding a little bit of leca in there to act as a drainage layer. I'm using extra long tweezers to move the drainage layer around and get it to sit just right. Next, I can slowly start building up the substrate. I want to use this lava rock in the terrarium, but as is, it's just too big. Now as I try to break this lava rock in half, I would like to thank my patrons. For now, the list includes you. In the future, for as little as €3, you'll get access to exclusive behind the scenes footage, a shout out in my next video and more. All of the funds will go directly towards improving these videos. But if you don't want to support me on Patreon, you can support me by liking this video. The rock finally broke. I placed a bigger piece in the container, but immediately felt it was a little bit too big. So I switched out for the smaller half and it looked much better right away. This gave me a good sense of direction. So I removed the stone again and built up a little bit more substrate. I also added the first plant to the setup. This is Opiapogon Kyoto. It does have a few dead leaves, but that's not a problem, we can just cut them off before use. This plant is often sold as an aquarium plant, but I find it does much better above water. With the plant in place, I could now put the rock back in the container, after which I can add another plant. This time I'm adding a Nubius Nana. This is also sold as an aquarium plant, but this time the plant actually works really well in the water. And this is one of those plants that just looks good in any kind of setup and will work in a variety of different types of setups. Just make sure it's humid. Next I went outside to collect a little bit of moss from my yard. I ripped it into smaller pieces and started placing it into the container, covering all the exposed substrate. Now as I'm doing this, you might notice this small white dot crawling around. This is a springtail and there are many more in this container. I did add these guys myself, but if you take moss from outside, there's a pretty big chance you introduce them as well. They will help keep this jar clean as they will eat mold and decaying leaves. Finally, I added a small branch of spiderwood and a few smaller pieces of lava rock to add a little bit more visual interest. I then gave it a quick spray and closed the jar. I hope you enjoyed this week's video, and if you want to see what's possible in a bigger terrarium, I recommend you watch this video next. I'll see you there.